This is Bonnie McCaffery, and I am at the International Quilt Festival in Houston, Texas. And have I got a treat for you this month? I am here with this year's Silver Star Award winner, who is Caryl Brier Fallert. Thanks for being with me, Caryl.
Well, thanks for inviting me.
How long have you been quilting?
Oh, gosh. Well, I made my very first quilt in about 1976. It wasn't much of a quilt. And then in the fall of 1982, I discovered that you could make quilts as art. And so I really count 1982 as the time I started quilting, so I guess that's 24 years.
Wow, that's fantastic. So when you switched to the art quilts, what kind of quilts were those? How would you describe those?
Well, the first few that I made were medallion-style quilts, so the designs were original, but they were still quilts that looked like you might use them on the bed. So that was sort of 1983. By 1984, I was making quilts that were only good for hanging on the wall.
Oh, wow. So, and you've been very innovative in your creative techniques. Can you tell us a little bit about evolution of the techniques that you've gone through the years?
Oh, it just kind of evolved. So I started making traditional seams, hand quilting, and then I got kind of interested in doing some more textured things and three-dimensional things, and in 1986 I developed high-tech tucks, yes, which we have just revived 20 years later with a big article in the Fons and Porter magazine. So
fantastic.
It's hopefully going to be popular again, and that's very three-dimensional technique. At the same time, I did a lot of work with dyeing fabrics. I couldn't get exactly the colors I wanted when I started quilting, and by 1984 I had discovered hand dyeing fabric and creating my own colors and painting my own multicolored fabrics. So it just kind of evolves one quilt to the next. As you're making one quilt, you're thinking what else you can do with this and what else might be fun.
Right. So, and I mean, you were the queen of machine quilting. You brought it all into our world for us, that it was now legal to do machine quilting.
Yeah, and I enjoyed machine quilting, and there were certainly other people doing it at that time, but I suppose the fact that I won the award at the American Quilter Society show in 1989, and it was a non-traditional quilt. There had been a winner here at Houston in '88. Best of Show was a machine quilted quilt, but it was traditional and it was a Christmas quilt, so it kind of flew under the radar. And when Corona 2 won at the AQS show 6 months later, and it was totally an art quilt, and it was machine quilted, everyone kind of noticed.
Yes.
And so I didn't really set out to be a pioneer there, but if it gave somebody permission to finish their quilts and machine quilt and have a good time with it, then I'm happy.
Yeah, that's great. So are you still traveling and teaching?
Well, I am a little bit. I'm here at Houston, teaching here, and I will still be teaching at one or two other conferences a year. But I've just moved to Paducah, Kentucky, and built a fabulous new workshop center in Paducah, Kentucky, with a state-of-the-art classroom. And I'm planning on having everyone come to Paducah and have retreats and workshops there right in my own home.
So tell me about the studio. What's in there?
I have a building that's close to 8,000 square feet that includes my business office and our internet store, and we ship things all over the world from our internet store. A small shop that has my lines of fabrics and hand dyeds and my patterns. And then a wonderful classroom, and also a dye studio in addition to the classroom, so I can have dyeing classes. And I can also invite guest artists in to teach their own classes. On the first floor, sort of off to one side, off the classroom, I have a great room and a kitchen, and I designed a really large kitchen. The kitchen is designed to seat 20 to 30 people. Not that I cook that much.
No. Yeah.
I'm a quilter.
Yes.
But when we have workshops at the Brier Patch Studio, everyone can just go to the kitchen and have lunch, and we'll have a caterer bring lunch in. And then on the second floor, I have my personal working studio, where I have my design studio and my computers and my publishing business,
right,
and my sewing studio. And I intentionally made that separate from the workspace so that someone else can be teaching a workshop in my classroom and I can still be working upstairs.
So if people get to Paducah, they can come to the shop. It's like a quilt shop where...
It is. There's a quilt shop a block and a half from me, so I'm not trying to compete with the local quilt shop. I'm selling my own lines of fabric and my own pattern line. And eventually I hope to have a collection of quilt-related gifts for, people who are coming in on the riverboats and that sort of thing.
And I think you also have CDs of your teaching techniques.
Yes, I do. I have started putting all of my workshops on CD-ROM, and they're not movies. There's something that I kind of end up having to explain because I don't know that anybody else is doing just exactly what I'm doing. But when I do a presentation in a workshop, I show lots and lots of images in minute detail of the process. And so I've just plugged in what I would be saying about each frame, and so you actually read it more like a book, but it's a book with 1,000 full-color photographs.
Yes.
And the text is plugged right into the photograph. And so you can click through this at your own pace and look at each image for as long as you need to. It's not like watching a movie where you have to keep your mental processes up with whatever the teacher is doing on the screen.
Right.
And you can jump around from chapter to chapter like you would in a book.
Right. Oh, I think that's fantastic. And I know on Carol's website she also has step-by-steps of how some of her quilts have evolved, and it's just fascinating to see the thought process behind that. So your exhibit over across the street, tell me about the quilts that are there.
Well, it's kind of a retrospective exhibit. It's more than 20 years worth of work, and certainly not everything I've done. It's selected quilts from 23 years. The earliest quilt over there is the only quilt that I ever made that's completely hand-pieced and hand-quilted. And it's a quilt that's made out of velvet and satin and men's tie fabrics. It's a medallion quilt from 1984. And the most recent quilt is called Spirogyra, and that was from probably 2003 or 2004. The one that I guess is my favorite over there is kind of the centerpiece of the show is my Millennium quilt called New Dawn, and it's the image of a golden phoenix rising out of the flames.
Oh, I love that piece. It's
Thank you.
Gorgeous.
Well, to me, it's full of symbolism. It's not only the phoenix, which is a symbol for new beginnings and positive energy and joy and life rising out of death and destruction, but there's a portal, which is always universally an image of the opportunity for new beginnings, and the spiral, which is a universal symbol for new life emerging, and the rainbow, which is a symbol for new possibilities. So it's all about possibilities and good positive images.
Yeah, sounds like your life also, which is changing all the time.
Well, yes, and I've been hanging that quilt in my studio in Lowertown in Paducah, which is a neighborhood which was boarded up crack houses 5 years ago and has completely been renovated, by this program that the city of Paducah had the foresight to start, inviting artists to come in and renovate the neighborhood. And the neighborhood is literally rising out of the ashes, and I'm part of that, and I love it more than I ever thought I would. It's just fabulous.
Yeah, you look so happy. You must be loving it.
I am. I do love it, and I want everyone to come and love it with me. I built a building that's way bigger than I need just for myself, and my dream is to fill it with creative, interesting people.
Wow,
and I'm 2 blocks south of the Ohio River, so I can say, y'all come now. I'd just like to invite everyone to come to my website and sign up if you'd like to receive notices when we start workshops. That's at www.breyerpatch.com, and that's Brier like I spell my name, B-R-Y-E-R, not like the ice cream or the thorny vine.
Caryl, thank you so much for joining me. I think it's wonderful that people get to see your quilts and hear about your quilting journey. And I thank you all for joining me this month, and I hope you'll come back next month to see what I have up in line for you then. Thanks for being with me.